3 days after the battle ended, the human fleet prepared to leave as quietly as they had arrived. There were no parades or ceremonies, no speeches or formal farewells. The humans simply finished their repairs, collected their dead, and made ready for departure. Admiral Tae-jin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, reviewing the final mission reports. The tactical success was undeniable. Every Draktar in the system had been eliminated with minimal damage to Volani infrastructure, but the cost in human lives weighed heavily on him. "Admiral, the Volani government is requesting a formal meeting," reported Captain Bo Young. "They want to discuss trade agreements, military alliances, territorial concessions. They're offering us anything we want." Tae-jin shook his head. "Decline all offers. We did not come here to gain territory or resources. Sir, they seem confused by our refusal. They don't understand why we won't accept payment for our services. Because accepting payment would make this a business transaction. What we did here was pest control, not a military contract." Tae-jin looked out at the debris field where hundreds of ships had died. "Captain, send a message to the Volani leadership. Tell them we appreciate their gratitude, but we have other work to do." Dr. Iyunji was finishing her work in the medical bays, where the last of the wounded Volani were being treated before transfer to their own medical facilities. She had spent the past 3 days documenting everything she learned about Volani, physiology and psychology. Her report would be distributed to every medical facility in human space, not because humans expected to encounter more Volani, but because the galaxy was full of peaceful species that might someday need protection from predators they could not fight. "Doctor, the refugee transfer is complete," reported Medical Lieutenant Park Ji-woo. "All Volani patients have been moved to their own medical ships." "Good. Have you finished the cultural analysis report?" "Yes, ma'am. It makes for interesting reading. The Volani are genuinely incapable of understanding why we fought so hard for people we'd never met." Dr. Yunji nodded. She had seen this confusion in every Volani she treated. To them, the human response seemed irrational, even insane. Why would anyone risk their lives for strangers? Why would anyone choose to fight when they could run? "It's not their fault," she said quietly. "They evolved in a different environment than we did. They can no more understand our protective instincts than we can understand their complete aversion to violence." "What do you think will happen to them, Doctor?" Dr. Yunji looked out the porthole at the Volani ships gathering near. "Their damaged planet? I think they'll survive. They're intelligent and adaptable. But I also think they'll never feel completely safe again. Now they know that the galaxy contains species like the Draktar and species like us." On the planet's surface, Colonel Young-soo was conducting his own farewell meeting with the Volani ground forces. Commander Wu Jin and his staff listened carefully as the human marine explained what they should expect in the future. "The Draktar in this region will avoid your system. Now," Young-soo said, "word will spread through their network that humans are protecting this area, but that protection won't last forever. Eventually, you'll face threats that we won't be around to handle." "What should we do?" asked Commander Wu Jin. "Exactly what I told your civilian leaders. Learn to fight effectively, not like humans. You're not built for our kind of warfare. But develop tactics that work with your biology and psychology." Young-soo activated a portable display showing various defensive configurations. "Your people are excellent at coordination and long-term planning. Use those strengths." Young-soo left behind detailed files on defensive tactics, weapon designs, and military organization. The information was specifically adapted for a peaceful species that needed to defend itself without becoming aggressive predators. As the last marine transport lifted off from the planet's surface, Sergeant Nara took one final look at the world they had saved. Reconstruction was already beginning. The Volani worked together with impressive efficiency, clearing debris and rebuilding damaged structures. "Think they'll be okay?" asked Corporal Hae-jin, one of her medical staff. "They're survivors," Nara replied. "Just a different kind of survivor than we are." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Dalsu was receiving new orders from Fleet Command. Long-range sensors had detected the movement of 3 massive Draktar hive fleets, each one capable of consuming entire star systems. The fleets were moving toward Coalition space, following migration patterns that would bring them into contact with dozens of inhabited worlds. Sir, our orders are to intercept the lead Hive fleet at coordinates 77 Alpha, reported his navigation officer. Fleet Command estimates over 2,000 bioships in the formation. Dalsu studied the tactical projection. 2,000. Bioships was a significant threat but not insurmountable. The human fleet had learned much about fighting the Draktar in recent years. What had once seemed like an impossible enemy was now simply a challenging one. How long until intercept? 18 days at maximum speed. Set course, signal the fleet, we have work to do. Back on the Villani Defense Station, Commander Hyunwoo was writing his official report of the battle. How did you explain what they had witnessed to people who had not been there? How did you describe creatures that fought with such casual brutality, yet died willingly to protect strangers? His report would eventually reach the Coalition Senate, where it would spark months of debate about humanity's place in the galaxy. Some would argue that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to roam freely through civilized space. Others would point out that without human intervention, the Villani would have been extinct. Sir, we're receiving a final transmission from Admiral Taijin, reported Lieutenant Deho. Put it through. The Admiral's voice came over the speakers one last time. Commander Hyunwoo, this is Admiral Taijin. We are departing your system now. I want to leave you with a final thought. Yes, Admiral? Your people will probably never understand why we did what we did. You will analyze our motives and debate our methods. You will worry about our intentions and fear our capabilities. That's normal and probably healthy. Hyunwoo listened carefully, knowing this might be the last time he heard from humanity's representative. But remember this, Taijin continued. We could have ignored your distress signal. We could have decided that your fate was not our concern. Instead, we chose to come. We chose to fight. We chose to die for people we had never met, in a place we had never seen, for no reward except the knowledge that innocent life would continue. There was a pause. Commander, the galaxy is full of predators. Most of them prey on the weak and defenseless. Humanity is also a predator, but we have chosen to prey on the predators. Remember that difference. The transmission ended. A few minutes later, space began to distort as the human fleet activated their FTL drives. The same violent tears in reality that had announced their arrival now marked their departure. Within seconds, they were gone, leaving only debris and memories behind. Sora stood in the rebuilt government center, addressing the Coalition Senate via quantum communication. Representatives from dozens of peaceful species watched as she tried to explain what humanity represented. Honorable delegates, I stand before you as a survivor of Draktar consumption, saved by a species we had never encountered before. The humans asked for nothing in return for their sacrifice. They offered no trade agreements, no territorial demands, no political alliances. They simply fought and died for us, then left. The assembly was quiet as she continued. Some of you will argue that humanity is dangerous. You are correct. They are possibly the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever produced. But that danger is precisely what made them capable of saving us when no one else could. A representative from the Peaceful Coalition interrupted. Delegate Sora, surely there must have been a diplomatic solution. Violence is never the only answer. Sora looked directly into the camera. Honorable delegate, I watched Draktar warriors ignore every attempt at communication. I saw them consume civilians who offered no resistance. I witnessed them destroy medical facilities and schools with the same enthusiasm they showed for military targets. Tell me, what diplomatic solution works against a species that views you as food? The assembly had no answer for that. Sora concluded her address with words that would be quoted throughout the galaxy for years to come. Humanity did not come to our world as conquerors or saviors. They came as the natural enemy of those who prey upon innocent life. The galaxy may never see their like again, and perhaps that is for the best. But when the monsters come for you in the dark, remember that somewhere out there, other monsters are hunting them. In the depths of space, the human fleet continued its mission. Admiral Taijin received reports from across human-controlled territory. More Draktar hive fleets had been detected. More peaceful worlds were under threat. More innocence needed. Protection from predators they could not fight. The work was never finished. For every hive fleet destroyed, 2 more seemed to emerge from the galactic rim. For every peaceful species saved, 3 more sent distress signals. The galaxy was vast, and it was full of creatures that preyed upon those weaker than themselves. But humanity had accepted this burden willingly. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and the battle had been raging for 12 hours when Chief Science Officer Dr. Wu Jin made the discovery that would change everything. His research team had been analyzing wreckage from destroyed Draktar bioships, trying to understand how the creatures coordinated their attacks so perfectly. "Admiral, you need to see this," Dr. Wu Jin reported from his laboratory aboard the Indomitable. "We found something unusual about the Draktar neural structure." Admiral Tae Jin arrived at the lab within minutes, accompanied by his tactical staff. On the examination table lay the remains of what had once been a Draktar warrior. The creature looked like a cross between an insect and a machine, with organic armor plating and built-in bioweapons. "What did you find, Doctor?" "Look at this." Dr. Wu Jin pointed to a complex organ structure near the creature's brain. "This is a bioquantum transmitter. Every Draktar has one, and they're all connected to a central network." "A hive mind?" "More than that. They share memories, tactical information, even sensory data in real time. When one Draktar learns something, they all learn it instantly. That's why they coordinate so well, and why they've been so successful against coalition forces." Admiral Tae Jin studied the organic transmitter. "Can we disrupt it?" Dr. Wu Jin smiled. "Better than that. We can hijack it." 3 hours later, human cyber warfare specialists, led by Commander Chan Wu, had connected to a captured Draktar hive node. The bioship was still partially alive, its neural network still connected to the greater swarm. What the humans planned to do with that connection was something no species had ever attempted before. "Are you sure this will work?" Admiral Tae Jin asked. Commander Chan Wu checked his equipment one final time. "The Draktar share everything through their network: memories, emotions, tactical data. They've never experienced deception because they can't lie to each other. That makes them vulnerable to a new kind of warfare." "Psychological warfare?" "Exactly. We're going to show them something they've never experienced before: fear." The cyber attack began at 1800 hours system time. Commander Chan Wu and his team injected a carefully crafted data package into the Draktar network. The package contained human war cries, recordings of destroyed Draktar hives, tactical analyses showing swarm defeats across human space, and most importantly, images of what happened to Draktar warriors when they faced human marines in ground combat. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Draktar swarm, individual bioships began to react to information that contradicted everything in their racial memory. For millions of years, the Draktar had been the ultimate predators. They consumed worlds and species without ever facing serious resistance. The concept of defeat was literally alien to them, but now their shared network was flooded with evidence of their own mortality. Images of bioships being torn apart by human weapons. Recordings of Draktar warriors being outfought and killed by human marines. Data showing that humans had not only survived contact with the swarm, but had actively hunted them across multiple star systems. For the first time in their evolutionary history, the Draktar experienced fear. "It's working," reported Commander Chan Wu. "Bioship formations are breaking up, they're starting to flee." On the tactical display, the red dots representing enemy vessels began to scatter. Some fled toward the edge of the system. Others simply stopped fighting and drifted in space, their crews paralyzed by emotions they had never experienced before. But not all of them ran. Lieutenant Jun Ho, now commanding his own destroyer after multiple battlefield promotions, found himself facing a group of bioships that had reacted to the psychological attack differently. Instead of fleeing, they had become enraged. Their attack patterns became wilder, more desperate, but also more dangerous. "Captain, the enemy is breaking formation," reported his weapons officer, Ensign Kyung-suk. "They're attacking individually, but they're not coordinating anymore. Good, Junho replied. Individual targets are easier to kill than coordinated swarms. All ships concentrate fire on the largest bioship. Let's finish this. The battle was entering its final phase. Admiral Tae-jin had given orders that echoed throughout the human fleet. No survivors, no witnesses. The Draktar swarm needed to learn that attacking peaceful species brought consequences, and the lesson had to be absolute. One by one, the remaining bioships were hunted down and destroyed. Some tried to surrender by powering down their weapons, but the humans had learned from coalition mistakes. The Draktar did not understand surrender. They only understood consumption and death. Showing them mercy was the same as signing death warrants for their next victims. The last major engagement took place near the outer edge of the system. Captain Dalsu led a squadron of destroyers in pursuit of fleeing bioships. His orders were explicit: prevent any Draktar from escaping to spread word of human weakness or mercy. Contact bearing 097, reported his sensor operator. Large bioship attempting to reach the FTL limit. Intercept course, Dalsu ordered. Maximum acceleration. The chase lasted 3 hours. The Draktar bioship was fast and desperate, using every trick its dying crew could think of to escape. But human ships were faster and human crews were more determined. When the Soul's Revenge finally caught up with its prey, the engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. Target destroyed, reported the weapons officer. No survivors detected. Dalsu nodded grimly. He felt no satisfaction in the kill, only the knowledge that it was necessary. Every Draktar that escaped would eventually join another swarm and threaten more innocent lives. As the last enemy ship died in nuclear fire, the true cost of salvation became clear. The human fleet had lost 15 ships with all hands during the battle. Over 3,000 human personnel had died protecting a species they had never met before today. On the Villani defense station, Commander Hyunwoo watched the final explosions fade from his sensors. The space around his world was filled with debris from hundreds of destroyed ships, both Draktar and human. The silence felt strange after so many hours of constant battle. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Tae-jin," reported Communications Officer Shin'e. "Put it through." The Admiral's voice came over the speakers, calm and professional despite the carnage his fleet had just endured. "Commander Hyunwoo, this is Admiral Tae-jin. The Draktar threat to your system has been eliminated. All enemy vessels have been destroyed. Admiral, we cannot thank you enough for what you have done. Your people died to save ours." "Yes, they did. That is what humans do when innocent life is threatened." There was a pause. "Commander, I want you to understand something. We did not come here to make friends or allies. We came here to eliminate a threat to peaceful species. That task is now complete. What happens now? Now we leave. Your people are safe, and the Draktar in this region will think twice before attacking anyone else. But you should know that this was not an isolated incident. Our long-range sensors have detected 3 more Draktar hive fleets moving toward Coalition space. We will intercept them before they reach any inhabited systems." Commander Hyunwoo felt a chill. "You're going to hunt them?" "Yes, that is what we do." Admiral Tae-jin's voice carried no emotion, only certainty. "The Draktar have consumed 43 worlds in the past decade. They will consume no more." The transmission ended, leaving the Villani to contemplate what they had witnessed. They had been saved by a species that fought wars the way natural disasters struck, with overwhelming force and no regard for the cost to themselves. On the planet's surface, Sora was coordinating the return of refugees to their damaged cities. The Draktar ground forces had been completely eliminated by human marines, but the cost had been high. Colonel Young-soo had lost over 200 soldiers in the ground campaign. "Ma'am, the human ground commander is requesting a meeting," reported. Her assistant Kyung-min. Colonel Young-soo arrived at the emergency government center looking tired, but satisfied. His armor was scorched and damaged from close combat with Draktar warriors. Behind him walked several of his surviving marines, their faces grim but determined. "Colonel, we want to thank you for what your people have done," Sora began. Young-soo held up a hand. "Ma'am, we don't need thanks. We need you to remember something. The galaxy is full of predators like the Draktar. Your coalition friends mean well, but they can't protect you from everything. You need to be prepared for the next time. What do you suggest? Learn to fight. Not like us. You're not built for that kind of warfare, but learn to defend yourselves effectively. Build better weapons. Train harder soldiers. Most importantly, accept that sometimes violence is the only answer to violence." Sora looked uncomfortable with the suggestion. "Violence goes against everything we believe in." "I understand that, but belief doesn't stop acid weapons or bioships." Youngsu's expression softened slightly. "Ma'am, we didn't save you so you could become like us. We saved you so you could remain yourselves. But remaining yourselves means being strong enough to survive." As the human fleet prepared for departure, the final casualty reports came in. 15 ships lost, 3,247 personnel killed in action, nearly 1,000 more wounded seriously enough to require extended medical care. The humans had paid a he. As the space battle continued, evacuation ships carrying Volani civilians began docking with human vessels. The refugees had nowhere else to go. Their orbital stations were destroyed, and the planet's surface was still a battlefield. The human ships were the only safe harbor in the system. Dr. Yunji, the chief medical officer aboard the Indomitable, had never treated alien patients before. She stood in the medical bay as the first group of wounded Volani was brought aboard. They looked like tall, graceful deer walking upright with large eyes and delicate features. They moved carefully as if they expected to be hurt. "Please don't be afraid," Dr. Yunji said softly, using the translation device clipped to her uniform. "We're here to help you." An elderly Volani female limped forward, supported by two younger ones. She had burns on her arms from a Draktar acid attack. As Dr. Yunji began to examine her, she noticed something strange. "Computer, run a physiological analysis on our patients," she ordered. The medical scanner hummed as it worked. After a few minutes, the results appeared on her screen. Dr. Yunji frowned as she read them. "Interesting," she murmured. "Lieutenant Park, come look at this." Medical Lieutenant Park Jiwoo joined her at the scanner display. "What did you find?" "Doctor, look at their muscle structure, bone density, nervous system development." Dr. Yunji pointed to the readings. "These people are physiologically incapable of significant aggression. Their bodies simply aren't built for violence." "What do you mean?" "Their muscle fibers are designed for endurance and fine motor control, not explosive power. Their bones are light and flexible, good for running, terrible for fighting. Most importantly, look at their brain chemistry." Dr. Yunji highlighted another section of the scan. "Their neurochemical makeup promotes cooperation and reduces aggressive responses. They literally cannot think like warriors." Lieutenant Park stared at the data. "So when the Draktar attacked, they never had a chance. Not because they lacked courage or determination, but because evolution never gave them the tools to fight back effectively." Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, human Marines were establishing defensive positions around the Volani refugee camps. Colonel Youngsu moved through his lines, checking on his troops and coordinating with the Volani ground forces. The Volani soldiers he met were brave enough, but they moved like people who had never been in a real fight. They held their weapons, awkwardly. They flinched at loud noises. When Draktar warriors charged their positions, the Volani tried to stun them or drive them away rather than kill them outright. "Colonel, we have a problem," reported Major Dong Hyun, his second in command. "The local forces keep trying to take Draktar prisoners. They don't understand that you can't negotiate with these things." Colonel Youngsu sighed. He had dealt with peaceful species before, though never in a combat situation. "Set up a meeting with their ground commander. Maybe we can explain the situation." An hour later, Colonel Youngsu sat across from Volani Ground Commander Wu Jin in a hastily erected command tent. The Volani officer looked exhausted and confused. His uniform was clean and well-maintained, like someone who had never expected to wear it in actual combat. "Commander Wu Jin, I need you to understand something about the enemy, Young Su began. The Draktar are not soldiers in the way you understand soldiers. They are not fighting for territory or resources or political goals. Then why are they fighting? Wu Jin asked. Because that's what they are. They are a species that evolved to consume everything in their path. Fighting them is not a political problem that can be solved with negotiation. It's a biological problem that can only be solved with extinction, theirs or yours. Wu Jin looked uncomfortable. Surely there must be some way to communicate with them, some common ground we can find. Young Su activated his portable display and showed Wu Jin footage from the battle. Watch this. This is what happens when Draktar encounter civilians, Yuras. Recording showed Draktar warriors attacking a Villani settlement. The creatures moved through the town like a plague, consuming everything organic they found. Plants, animals, people. It made no difference to them. They were not trying to conquer or control, they were simply feeding. Do you see any behavior there that suggests intelligence in the way you understand it? Young Su asked. Any hesitation? Any attempt to communicate or negotiate? Wu Jin watched in horror as the recording showed Draktar warriors ignoring surrender, attempts and continuing to attack even when the Villani offered no resistance. They're not even trying to capture prisoners. Exactly. Because to them you are not people. You are food, and you cannot negotiate with a forest fire or make peace with a plague. Young Su turned off the display. That's why we fight them, the way we do. Because it's the only language they understand. Back on the human ships, the rescued Villani were getting their first close look at their saviors. What they saw confused and frightened them. Sergeant Nara was working in the temporary refugee processing center, helping coordinate medical care and food distribution. The Villani watched her with a mixture of gratitude and fear. She was kind, to them gentle with the children, patient with the elderly, but there was something predatory in the way she moved, something dangerous in her eyes. Sergeant, may I ask you something? Said a young Villani female named Ha-Un. She was one of the few who spoke some human language. Of course. Why did you come to help us? We are not your people. Our worlds are very far apart. What do you gain from this? Nara considered the question carefully. Ha-Un, what did your people do when you first learned about the Draktar threat? We tried to communicate with them. We offered them resources, territory, anything they wanted if they would leave us alone. And when that didn't work, we asked our allies for help. We sent messages to every peaceful species in the galaxy begging for assistance. And what did they do? Ha-Un looked ashamed. They sent sympathy and medical supplies, but no soldiers, no weapons. They said violence was not the answer. Nara nodded. That's the difference between your people and mine. When something threatens innocent life, we don't send sympathy. We send Marines. But why? What makes you different? Your people evolved on a kind world, Ha-Un. Plenty of food, no major predators, stable climate. Evolution made you cooperative and gentle because those traits helped you survive. Nara gestured toward the porthole where the battle still raged outside. My people evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, limited resources. Evolution made us aggressive and protective because those were the traits that kept us alive. Ha-Un thought about this. So you fight because you have to? We fight because we're good at it, and because sometimes fighting is the only thing that works. Nara smiled, and for a moment her expression was purely human, warm and caring. But we choose what to fight for, and we choose to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. As the battle continued, more and more Villani began to understand what humanity represented. They were not evil, despite their capacity for violence. They were not conquerors, despite their overwhelming military power. They were something the peaceful galaxy had never seen before. Protectors who were more dangerous than the threats they protected against. Dr. Yoon-ji made another discovery, as she treated more refugees. The Villani were not just psychologically peaceful, they were biochemically incapable of the kind of sustained aggression necessary for modern warfare. Their bodies produced stress hormones that promoted flight responses rather than fight responses. When faced with extreme danger, their instinct was to run or hide, not to stand and fight. It's actually quite elegant, she explained to Admiral Tae-jin during her daily report. Their evolution optimized them for survival in a peaceful environment. High intelligence, strong social cooperation, efficient resource management. But it left them completely vulnerable to a species like the Draktar. And what about us, Doctor? Tae-jin asked. What did evolution optimize us for? Dr. Yoon-ji looked out at the ongoing battle, where human ships continued their relentless assault on the Draktar swarm. Survival in a hostile environment, Admiral. We're optimized for exactly this kind of situation. As the day wore on, the truth became clear to everyone involved. The Villani had waited 18 months for salvation, hoping their peaceful allies would find a diplomatic solution to the Draktar threat. Instead, salvation had come in the form of a species that was possibly more dangerous than their enemies. But that danger was precisely what made them capable of victory. The humans fought the Draktar with the same ruthless efficiency that the Draktar had shown to their victims. The difference was that humans chose their targets carefully, while the Draktar consumed everything in their path. Commander Hyun-woo received one final transmission from Admiral Tae-jin as the space battle entered its last phase. Commander, in 1 hour this battle will be over. Every Draktar in your system will be dead. Your people will be safe. We are forever in your debt, Admiral. No, you are not. We did not do this for you. We did this because it needed to be done. There was a pause. But I will give you some advice. When other species ask you about humans, tell them this. We are not your friends, but we are not your enemies either. We are something else entirely. We are what happens when evolution creates a species capable of hunting monsters. The transmission ended. Leaving, the space battle raged for 6 hours. Commander Hyun-woo had never seen anything like it. Coalition warfare was careful and precise. Ships tried to disable each other without causing unnecessary death. Battles often ended when one side surrendered or agreed to negotiate. But this was not coalition warfare. This was something else entirely. The human ships fought like wild animals. They used ramming attacks, flying their vessels directly into enemy bioships at full speed. They detonated nuclear weapons at close range, accepting the damage to their own ships if it meant destroying more enemies. They showed no interest in capturing prisoners or preserving enemy vessels for study. Most shocking of all, they seemed to enjoy it. Sir, I'm picking up more human communications, reported Shin-ae from her station. Her face was pale as she listened to the transmissions. They're laughing. Laughing? Yes, sir. After they destroy enemy ships, they cheer and laugh like they're playing a game. Shin-ae looked disturbed. One of their captains just called a ramming attack beautiful. Another one said watching bioships explode was the most fun he'd had all week. Hyun-woo felt sick. The Villani were a peaceful people. Violence made them uncomfortable, even when it was necessary for survival. Seeing beings who seemed to take joy in destruction was deeply disturbing, but he could not argue with the results. The human fleet, outnumbered 60-1, was winning. On the human flagship, Admiral Tae-jin coordinated the battle with calm efficiency. His officers moved around the bridge like dancers, each one knowing their job perfectly. When Weapons Officer Commander Hae-won reported heavy casualties, Tae-jin's response was immediate. Casualty report. We've lost 8 ships with all hands, Admiral. 12 more are badly damaged. But we've destroyed over 400 enemy vessels. Acceptable. Losses. Continue the attack. Hae-won hesitated. Sir, the Villani are monitoring our communications. They seem disturbed by our methods. Tae-jin looked at the tactical display, where red dots continued to disappear as human weapons found their targets. Commander, the Villani are herbivores. They evolved from animals that spent millions of years running from predators. They don't understand what we are. What are we, sir? We are what happens when evolution creates a species that stopped running and started hunting back. Tae-jin turned to face his weapons officer. The Draktar are trying to eat innocent people. That makes them our natural enemy. Everything else is just details. Meanwhile, Captain Minji's replacement, Captain Dalsu, was leading the attack on a cluster of bioships near the planet. His destroyer, the Incheon Rising, moved through the enemy formation like a shark through a school of fish. Every shot from his weapons destroyed or crippled an enemy vessel. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Vallani surface," reported. His communications officer, Lieutenant Sunhee, put it through. The voice that came over the speakers was female and frightened. It belonged to Sora, the evacuation coordinator on the planet below. "Human ships, this is Sora of the Vallani Emergency Council. We are grateful for your help, but we must ask, are you planning to attack our planet after you finish with the Draktar?" Captain Dalsu was quiet for a moment. Then he activated the transmitter. "Ma'am, my name is Captain Dalsu. We are not here to attack you. We are here to kill every single Draktar in this system. After that, we will leave. But your methods, the way you fight, it's so violent." "Yes, ma'am, it is, but the Draktar only understand one kind of communication. We are speaking their language." On the planet's surface, Sora tried to understand what she was seeing. The evacuation was still continuing, but now there was hope. The human fleet was actually winning against impossible odds, but watching them fight was like watching a nightmare come to life. Her assistant, Kyung-min, was monitoring the news feeds from across the city. "Ma'am, people are celebrating in the streets. They're calling the humans heroes." "Are they heroes?" Sora asked. "Or are they just better predators than the Draktar?" She did not know the answer, and that frightened her. As the space battle continued, some Draktar bioships began landing on the planet's surface. These were troop transports carrying thousands of Draktar warriors to begin the ground assault. The creatures that emerged from the bioships were nightmares made real. Insectoid predators the size of bears, with razor-sharp claws and acid spit. The Vallani ground forces tried to stop them, but their weapons were designed for peacekeeping, not warfare. Energy stunners and non-lethal restraint devices had little effect on creatures that had evolved to consume entire ecosystems. That was when the human Marines arrived. Colonel Young-soo led the first wave of human ground forces down to the planet, in armored dropships. The ships landed in the middle of Draktar formations and opened their doors like the jaws of metal predators. What came out made the watching Vallani question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Human Marines were nothing like coalition peacekeepers. They wore powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. Their weapons were designed to kill as efficiently as possible. They moved through the battlefield like professional killers, which is exactly what they were. Sergeant Nara, a combat medic, set up a field hospital near the main evacuation point. As she worked on wounded Vallani civilians, she tried to explain to them what they were seeing. "Your people evolved from prey animals," she told a young Vallani male who had been injured in the initial Draktar attack. "You run from danger because that's what kept your ancestors alive. The Draktar evolved from pack hunters. They chase and kill because that's what kept their ancestors alive." "What about humans?" the young Vallani asked. Nara smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "We evolved from persistence hunters on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to work together to bring down creatures much larger than ourselves. Most importantly, we learned that sometimes the best defense is to hunt down everything that wants to hunt you and kill it first." The young Vallani stared at her with wide eyes. "You're apex predators." "Yes. And so are the Draktar. The difference is that they hunt for food and territory. We hunt for justice." As if to prove her point, a squad of Marines appeared at the edge of the evacuation zone. They were carrying weapons that looked more like industrial tools than military equipment. Flamethrowers, explosive charges, and kinetic rifles that fired metal spikes at supersonic speeds. The Marines moved in perfect coordination, communicating with hand signals and shared tactical awareness. When they encountered Draktar warriors, the result was swift and brutal. The insectoid predators that had terrorized the Vallani for years were cut down like wheat before the scythe. But what disturbed the Vallani most was not the efficiency of human warfare. It was the obvious enjoyment the humans took in their work. The Marines advanced toward the enemy with the same eager anticipation that Villani felt when approaching a favorite meal. "They're not just fighting," whispered one of the evacuation volunteers to Sora. "They're hunting." Sora nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand what humanity represented. They were not saviors in the traditional sense. They were something much more dangerous and much more useful. They were the natural enemy of everything that preyed on innocent life. As the day wore on, the tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the humans. In space, Admiral Taejin's fleet had destroyed over half the Draktar swarm. On the ground, Colonel Youngsu's Marines were systematically exterminating every Draktar warrior they could find. But the cost was becoming clear. Human casualties were mounting. Ships burned. In space, Marines died on alien soil far from home protecting people they had never met. And they kept fighting anyway. Commander Hyunwoo received a direct transmission from Admiral Taejin as the space battle entered its final phase. "Commander, we are going to win this battle," the Admiral said. "But I want you to understand something. We did not come here to be your friends. We came here because the Draktar represent everything we have spent our evolutionary history learning to destroy. After today, our species will probably never meet again." "Why?" Hyunwoo asked. "Because we are too dangerous for you, and you are too peaceful for us. But today, that difference is what saved your world." The transmission ended, leaving Hyunwoo alone with a terrible understanding. Humanity had not come to join the galactic community. They had come to do what the galactic community could not do for itself: fight monsters and win. Admiral Taejin stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, studying the tactical display. The screens showed hundreds of red dots representing Draktar bioships surrounding the fourth planet. Each dot was a vessel capable of destroying entire cities. His own fleet was represented by 47 blue dots, looking tiny against the red swarm. "Status report," he ordered. "All ships ready for combat, Admiral," reported Captain Bo Young from the tactical station. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum. The Draktar are beginning to turn toward us." Taejin nodded. He had expected this. The Draktar were not stupid. They could count as well as anyone else. 47 human ships against over 3,000. Bioships should have been a massacre. Any reasonable species would have retreated immediately. But humans were not reasonable. That was why they were here. The human fleet had detected the Villani distress signal by pure accident. A deep space monitoring station near the edge of human territory had picked up the quantum burst while tracking asteroid mining operations. The signal was weak and distorted after traveling so far, but the translation computers had eventually decoded it. The message told of a peaceful species facing complete extinction. Their world was being consumed by creatures that ate planets. They were begging for help from anyone who could hear them. Most species would have filed the message away or forwarded it to the appropriate authorities. The human response had been very different. Within 6 hours, Admiral Taejin had received orders to take the nearest battle fleet and investigate. Not to offer aid or negotiate, to investigate with overwhelming force. "Enemy formation is changing," reported Captain Bo Young. "They're moving to surround us." "Let them," Taejin replied calmly. "Signal all ships. Attack pattern Delta 7. Target the largest bioships first." Captain Minji received the attack order on her destroyer, Soul's Fury. Her crew had been waiting for this moment since they left human space. The ship was smaller than most in the fleet, built for speed and hitting power rather than heavy combat. But Minji preferred it that way. She liked being able to move fast and hit hard. "You heard the Admiral," she announced to her crew. "All hands to battle stations. Lieutenant Junho, give me a firing solution on that large bioship at bearing 27 Mark IV. Lieutenant Junho worked quickly at his console. The young officer had joined the crew just 6 months ago, fresh from the Naval Academy. This would be his first real battle, but he showed no signs of fear. Human naval training was very thorough. "Target locked, Captain. Range 400,000 kilometers and closing." "Good. Weapons?" "All missile tubes loaded with kinetic penetrators," reported Weapons Officer Sergeant Heian. "Ready to fire on your command." Minji smiled. The kinetic penetrators were solid metal rods accelerated to enormous speeds by magnetic rails. They carried no explosives, but they did not need any. When something that heavy hit something else, at that speed the results were spectacular. Meanwhile, on the Volani defense station, Commander Hyunwoo watched the human fleet advance. The ships moved in perfect formation like a pack of hunting animals. There was something beautiful and terrible about the way they flew through space. "Sir, the humans are charging directly at the enemy center," reported Lieutenant Daeho. "They're not using any evasive maneuvers. Maybe they don't know how dangerous the Draktar are," suggested Communications Officer Shin-ae. Hyunwoo shook his head. "Look at their ships. Those are warships, built for fighting. They know exactly what they're doing." The first human weapons reached the Draktar swarm exactly on schedule. The kinetic rounds moved so fast they were invisible until they hit their targets. When they struck the bioships, the results were immediate and devastating. The Draktar bioships were living creatures as much as they were machines. Their hulls were made of organic armor that could heal itself and adapt to different types of attacks. Coalition energy weapons often took several hits to penetrate this armor, and even then the ships could sometimes repair the damage. But the human kinetic rounds did not just penetrate the armor. They punched holes completely through the bioships from one side to the other. Where the rounds hit, pieces of the ship simply ceased to exist. The organic hulls could not heal damage that severe that quickly. Bioship after bioship began exploding as their internal organs were shredded by metal moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Draktar swarm, which had seemed so overwhelming just moments before, suddenly looked vulnerable. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Daeho. "They're actually hurting them." But the Draktar were not helpless. The swarm began to return fire with acid streams and bioplasma charges. The human ships took hits, and their shields flared with energy as they absorbed the attacks. Several ships suffered hull breaches, and one of the smaller frigates exploded, completely when its reactor was hit. Admiral Tae-jin watched his tactical display as the battle developed. Red and blue dots moved across the screen like pieces on a game board. Each dot represented hundreds of lives, but he forced himself to think of them as numbers. That was how fleet combat worked. You had to see the bigger picture. "Casualty report," he ordered. "We've lost the frigate Busan and 2 destroyers are reporting heavy damage," replied Captain Bo Young. "But we've destroyed over 60 enemy bioships in the first wave." "Acceptable losses," Tae-jin said coldly. "Continue the attack. Signal Captain Minji to begin her run on the enemy command ship." Captain Minji received the order and immediately changed course toward the largest Draktar bioship. The creature was the size of a small moon, covered in weapon pods that looked like tumors growing on its hull. It was the command node for this part of the swarm, controlling the movements of hundreds of smaller bioships. "Captain, that thing is heavily defended," warned Lieutenant Junho. "We'll have to get through at least 50 escort ships to reach it." "Then that's what we'll do," Minji replied. "All power to forward shields. Engineering, I want everything the engines can give us." The Soul's Fury accelerated toward the command ship like a bullet fired from a gun. Enemy bioships moved to intercept. But the human destroyer was too fast and too small. It weaved between acid streams and bioplasma bolts, taking hits but continuing forward. On the Volani defense station, Communications Officer Shin-ai was monitoring the human fleet's communications. What she heard made her blood run cold. "Sir, you need to hear this," she told Commander Hyunwoo. "What is it?" "The human ship Soul's Fury is badly damaged, but they're not retreating. Listen to what their captain just said to her crew." The bridge filled with the sound of Captain Minji's voice, calm and determined despite the battle raging around her ship. "All hands, this is the captain. We've taken heavy damage, but we're still in the fight. If we don't make it back from this run, remember that we died protecting innocent people who never did anything to deserve what the swarm wanted to do to them. That's a good death. Now let's give these bugs something to remember us by." The channel filled with the sound of human voices shouting agreement. They were not afraid. They were angry. Commander Hyunwoo stared at the speakers in shock. "They're going to die and they're celebrating it?" "I don't think they see it as dying, sir," said Lieutenant Daeho quietly. "I think they see it as winning." The Soul's Fury, reached the Draktar command ship and fired every weapon it had directly into the creature's central mass. The kinetic rounds tore through organic armor and into the bioship's brain center. The massive creature convulsed once, then began to break apart. But the effort cost the human destroyer everything. Surrounded by enemy ships, the Soul's Fury took hit after hit until its shields failed and its hull began to split open. Captain Minji made her final decision. All hands abandon ship. Set the reactor for overload. If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as possible. The destroyer exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that consumed itself and 20 nearby bioships. The explosion was so bright that even the people on the planet's surface could see it. Admiral Tai Jin watched the explosion on his tactical display. One blue dot disappeared, taking 20 red dots with it. The numbers were in humanity's favor, but he had lost good people. That was the price of this kind of warfare. "Admiral, the enemy swarm is beginning to break up," reported Captain Bo Young. "The loss of their command ship is causing confusion in their formations." "Good. Signal all ships. Press the attack. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people." The human fleet surged forward, their weapons carving through the Draktar swarm like knives through flesh. They fought with a brutality that shocked the watching Villani, but also with a precision that spoke of long experience in this kind of warfare. Commander Hyunwoo realized something that made him feel both grateful and terrified. The humans had not come to save the Villani out of kindness or duty. They had come because destroying the Draktar was something they were very good at, and they enjoyed doing it. His people were about to be saved by the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the defense station, watching his world die. Through the large windows, he could see the enemy ships moving like dark clouds across space. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh, crawling toward his home planet below. The Villani had been fighting for 3 long years. Hyunwoo remembered when the war started. His people were farmers and teachers, not soldiers. They grew beautiful crops under 3 suns and built cities that looked like gardens. War was something they read about in old books, not something they lived through, but the Draktar swarm came anyway. They ate planets. They ate everything living and left nothing behind but empty rock. World after world fell to their hunger. Now it was the Villani's turn to face the darkness. "Sir, the last defense platform is failing," reported Lieutenant Daeho from his station. His voice was calm, but Hyunwoo could see the fear in his young officer's eyes. They all knew what would happen next. The orbital platforms had been their strongest defense, massive structures with powerful weapons. They had held the enemy back for months. But the Draktar kept coming. They sent wave after wave of bioships that looked like living things but fought like machines. Each wave was bigger than the last. "How long before they break through?" Hyunwoo asked. 2 hours, maybe 3, Daeho replied. "The platforms' shields are at 15%. On the planet below, Sora was leading the evacuation of the capital city. She had been the city's mayor before the war. Now she was trying to save as many lives as possible. The transport ships could only carry so many people, and there were millions who needed to escape. Sora looked at the long lines of families waiting to board the ships. Parents held small children. Old people carried what little they could. Everyone moved slowly, quietly. They had learned not to panic. Panic killed more people than enemy weapons sometimes. "We need more ships," she told her assistant, a young male named Kyungmin. "At this rate, we can only save half the city." Kyungmin checked his tablet. "The other cities are sending what they can, but they need ships too. The enemy is attacking everywhere at once." Sora nodded. She had known this day would come. When the Draktar attacked a world, they attacked all of it at the same time. No place was safe. No one could hide. 18 months ago, the Villani had sent distress signals across the galaxy. They had begged for help from their allies in the peaceful coalition. The coalition was made up of dozens of species who believed in solving problems with words, not weapons. They had rules about war. They tried to save lives, not destroy them. But the coalition's help never came. They sent messages of support. They offered to send medical supplies and food, but they could not send soldiers or warships. Most of them were too far away. Others were fighting their own battles against the swarm. Some were already gone, their worlds eaten and empty. The Draktar did not follow the Coalition's rules of war. They did not try to capture territory or make demands. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next world. Fighting them was like fighting a disease or a natural disaster. Back on the defense station, Hyun-woo watched another platform explode in a ball of fire. The Draktar bioships swarmed around the wreckage like insects feeding on a dead animal. Their hulls pulsed with strange light, and their weapons shot streams of acid that ate through metal like water. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Shin-ae. She looked confused as she worked at her console. "It's on a frequency we don't recognize." "From where?" Hyun-woo asked. "That's the strange part, sir. It's coming from the edge of the system, but our sensors don't show any ships there." Shin-ae frowned at her instruments. "The signal is very powerful but crude, not like Coalition technology." "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with static and strange sounds. Then a voice came through, speaking in a language none of them recognized. But their translation computers worked on it, slowly turning the alien words into something they could understand. "This is Admiral Tae-jin of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal. We are approaching your position." "Hold on." Hyun-woo looked at his officers. None of them had heard of humans before. "Shin-ae, check the Coalition database. What do we know about this species?" After a few minutes, Shin-ae looked up with a strange expression. "Sir, they're listed in the database, but the file is marked with a warning. Their home system is classified as quarantined." "Quarantined? Why?" "Deathworld Classification 12, sir. The highest danger rating in the Coalition database." Shin-ae read from her screen. "It says their planet is so dangerous that no Coalition species should attempt to visit it." Lieutenant Dae-ho spoke up from his station. "Sir, if their world is that dangerous, what kind of species evolved there?" Before Hyun-woo could answer, the space around the defense station began to change. Reality seemed to twist and tear like fabric being ripped apart. Gravitational waves washed over them, making the station shake. Warning alarms started ringing throughout the ship. "What's happening?" Hyun-woo shouted over the noise. "Ship's coming. Out of FTL, sir," Dae-ho reported. "But I've never seen an exit signature like this. They're tearing holes in space." Through the windows, they could see the newcomers arriving. The ships that came through the holes in space were nothing like Coalition vessels. Where Coalition ships were smooth and elegant, these were angular and brutal. They looked like they were built for war, not exploration. The human fleet was small. Hyun-woo counted less than 50 ships against the Draktar's thousands. Any sane military commander would retreat immediately. The odds were impossible. But the human ships did not retreat. They formed into attack formations and accelerated directly toward the enemy swarm. No hesitation, no attempts at communication. They simply charged into battle against overwhelming odds. "Get me a channel to the human fleet," Hyun-woo ordered. "Channel open, sir." "Human ships, this is Commander Hyun-woo of the Volani Defense Corps. You are severely outnumbered. The enemy has over 3,000 vessels. I recommend immediate withdrawal. The reply came back quickly in that same crude transmission style. "Commander, this is Admiral Tae-jin. We did not come here to retreat. Take your people to safety. We will handle the swarm." "But Admiral, you only have 50 ships. They will destroy you." There was a pause. Then Admiral Tae-jin's voice came back, and there was something cold in it that made Hyun-woo's blood freeze. "Commander, you do not understand what humans are. We did not come here to save you. We came here to kill every single Draktar in this system. Now get your people to safety and let us work." The channel closed. Hyun-woo stared at the human fleet as it approached the enemy swarm. The ships moved like predators stalking prey. There was something about the way they flew that reminded him of the hunting animals from old nature documentaries. Patient, deadly, sure of their kill. "Sir, what should we do?" asked Lieutenant Dae-ho. Hyun-woo looked at his young officer, then at the approaching battle. The Volani had waited 18 months for salvation to arrive. Now something had come, but he was not sure if it was salvation or something else entirely. Signal all remaining platforms and ships, he ordered. Withdraw to minimum safe distance and send a message to the surface. Tell them that help has arrived, but warn them that our rescuers might be more dangerous than our enemies. As the defense station pulled back, Hyunwoo watched the human fleet close with the Draktar swarm. In a few minutes he would see what happened when one apex predator species met another in battle. He was not sure he wanted to know the answer,